The Galactic Integration Station floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. It circled a small moon called, far from any empire or kingdom. This was neutral ground, a place where new species came to be judged, measured, and sorted into the great family of galactic civilization. Commander stood in the assessment hall with his 4 arms folded behind his back. He was a species that looked like giant insects standing on 2 legs. His compound eyes could see in every direction at once, and right now they watched the long line of newcomers waiting to be scanned. The bioscanner was the most important machine in the station. It stood in the center of the hall like a metal doorway covered in lights and sensors. When someone walked through it, the machine read everything about them: their strength, their intelligence, their danger level. The machine had been running for over 600 cycles, and it had never been wrong. Watched as a warrior stepped onto the platform. There were huge creatures with 4 arms and skin like stone. They were known across the galaxy as fierce fighters. The scanner hummed and displayed the results. Strength Index 847. Classification High Combat Potential. Status Approved with monitoring. Made a note on his standard reading, nothing unusual. Next came a diplomat. There were soft, round creatures covered in blue fur. They were peaceful and known for their skills in negotiation. The scanner hummed again. Strength Index 312. Classification Non-Threatening. Status Approved. The line moved forward. Species after species walked through the scanner, had processed thousands of beings over his career, and he could usually guess the readings before they appeared. Tall meant strong. Claws meant dangerous. Soft meant weak. The galaxy followed predictable patterns. Then the humans arrived. Looked up from his when they entered the assessment hall. There were 5 of them walking in a small group. They wore simple uniforms that looked cheap compared to the colorful clothes of other species. They were small creatures standing on 2 legs with soft skin and hair on their heads. Had read the basic file on humans. Class 7 planet. Recently discovered. Nothing special. 4 of them were adults, 3 men and 1 woman. They looked around the hall with wide eyes, clearly amazed by everything they saw. The 5th human was a child, a girl who looked about 12 cycles old by human measurement. She walked behind the adults, holding a small stuffed animal against her chest. It was a toy shaped like some earth creature with long ears. The girl's name was. She had dark hair cut short and round cheeks that made her look younger than she was, while the adults seemed nervous, simply looked curious. Her eyes moved from one alien species to another, studying them the way someone might study fish in a tank. "Humans," said to his assistant, "process them quickly. We have 300 more species waiting today." The first human stepped onto the scanner platform. His name was, and he was the leader of the small delegation. He was a tall man for a human, with hair at his temples and kind eyes. The scanner hummed. Strength Index 294. Classification Non-Threatening. Status Approved. Nodded as expected. Humans were weak creatures from a weak planet. The second human stepped forward, a woman named with long black hair. The scanner hummed. Strength Index 278. Classification Non-Threatening. Status Approved. The third and 4th humans followed. Similar readings. Nothing remarkable. Was already looking at the next group in line, a collection of crystalline beings from the outer rim. "Just the child left," his assistant said. Glanced back as walked toward the scanner. She still held her stuffed animal, and she paused at the edge of the platform to look up at the lights. "It's pretty," she said in a soft voice. "Step forward, please," the automated system instructed. Walked onto the platform. The scanner began its work. And then everything went wrong. The lights on the scanner flickered. Once. Twice. Then they all turned red at the same time. A high-pitched alarm began to sound, and every screen in the assessment hall switched to display the same image. Emergency warnings flashed in a dozen different languages. His compound eyes went wide. He pushed forward through the crowd, shoving aside a nephrite diplomat who complained in colors of angry purple. "What is happening?" demanded. "Show me the reading." The main display was filled with static. Numbers appeared and disappeared too fast to read. The scanner was working harder than had ever seen, pulling more power from the station's grid as it tried to analyze the small human girl. Stood calmly in the center of the platform, looking around at all the flashing lights with innocent curiosity. "Did I break it?" she asked. The scanner made a sound like a dying animal. Then, finally, the display cleared and showed a single result. Where there should have been numbers, there was only text. Red text, glowing so bright it hurt to look at. "Handle with care." Stared at the screen. His mandibles clicked together in confusion. In 400 cycles of service, he had never seen such a reading. The scanner always gave numbers, always gave classifications. It did not give warnings. "Run the scan again," he ordered. The technicians obeyed. The scanner hummed and worked. The same result appeared. "Handle with care." Again. Same result. The crowd in the assessment hall had grown silent. Every species, from the mighty to the tiny, stared at the small human girl, looked back at them and smiled shyly. "Is something wrong?" asked, stepping forward. His voice was tight with worry. "Is my daughter okay? What does that mean?" Did not answer. He was already sending emergency messages to the station's senior staff, to the security division, to the scientific council, to beings he had not contacted in decades. "Commander," his assistant whispered, "what do we do?" Watch the human child step off the platform. She walked back to her father and took his hand. She looked like any other child in the galaxy, small, harmless, innocent. But the scanner had never been wrong. "Isolate them," said quietly. "Comfortable quarters, full security. No one speaks to anyone until I understand what we are dealing with." "Sir, they are diplomats. They have rights under galactic law." "I know." His voice was heavy. "I also know that the last time the scanner gave a warning instead of a reading, it was for a species that destroyed 3 solar systems before we stopped them." His assistant's face went pale. Looked up at her father as guards began to surround their group. She did not seem afraid. She did not seem worried. She simply looked curious, the same way she had looked at everything since arriving. "Daddy," she said, "why is everyone staring at me?" Squeezed her hand. He did not have an answer. Above them, the display continued to glow red with those 3 simple words. Around them, beings from 100 different worlds whispered to each other in 100 different languages. But they were all asking the same question. What was so special about this human child? And why did the most advanced scanner in the galaxy tell them to handle her with care? Looked at the girl one more time. She had started humming a little song to herself, completely unbothered by the chaos around her. He had a feeling his life was about to become very complicated. Word traveled fast through the station. By the time the artificial sun had set twice, every being on the Galactic Integration Station knew about the human girl. Stories spread from mouth to mouth, from mind to mind, from color to color. Each telling made the story bigger. Some said she had broken the scanner with her thoughts. Others said she had made it scream in fear. A few whispered that she was not a girl at all, but something else wearing a girl's skin. The truth was much simpler and much stranger. Sat in a comfortable room in the station's guest quarters. The room had a soft bed, a window showing the stars, and a small table with food that the station's computers had tried to make taste like Earth meals. The result was close but not quite right, like a song sung by someone who had only read the words. She did not seem bothered by any of this. She sat on the floor with her stuffed rabbit in her lap, drawing pictures on a tablet the guards had given her. She drew her home, her school, her cat, a fat orange creature named who was waiting for her back on Earth. Through the reinforced glass wall, Dozens of scientists watched her. "She appears completely normal," said Dr. Vellum, a nephrite whose body was made of colored gas contained in a floating sphere. Nephrites communicated through color, and right now Dr. Vellum was swirling with the confused purple of someone who did not understand what they were seeing. "The scanner disagrees," replied Chief Technician Bora. He was human himself, one of the first of his kind to join the galactic community. He had lived on the station for 3 cycles now, helping to prepare for more humans to arrive. He had never expected this. Bora ran his hand through his hair and looked at the data on his screen. He had checked the scanner 17 times. He had replaced parts. He had run every test he knew. The machine was working perfectly. "Show us everything," demanded a deep voice. Everyone in the observation room turned. High Arbiter had arrived. Was ancient. His body was made of living crystal that had grown slowly over 3,000 cycles. He floated a few inches above the ground, his form catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. Had seen empires rise and fall. He had witnessed the birth of new species and the death of old ones. Very little surprised him anymore. But today, his crystal body hummed with something that might have been worry. "The full reading," commanded. "Hide nothing." Bora pulled up the data on the main screen. Everyone gathered closer to see. Species human, scientific name Homo. Age 12.4 standard galactic cycles. Physical strength 89. This was below average. A human child was weaker than most beings in the galaxy. Mental capacity 156. This was above average. Humans were smarter than they looked. Threat assessment. The word REDACTED appeared in red letters. Special designation, handle with care. Additional notes, restricted, clearance level Omega required. The room fell silent. "Omega clearance," said slowly. His voice sounded like wind chiming through glass. "I have not seen that classification in 800 cycles, not since the Silence Wars." "What were the Silence Wars?" Bora asked. No one answered. The older beings in the room looked away, their expressions dark with old memories. "It does not matter," said Commander, who stood in the corner with his 4 arms crossed. "What matters is understanding why this child triggered such a response. She is small. She is weak. She is young. What about her could possibly require Omega classification?" Dr. Vellum floated closer to the glass. On the other side had stopped drawing. She was looking at the scientists now, her head tilted to one side like a curious bird. Then she waved at them. Dr. Vellum's colors flickered with surprise. She drifted backward quickly, bumping into a scientist who growled in annoyance. "She knew we were watching," Dr. Vellum said. "The glass is supposed to be one way." "It is one way," Bora confirmed. "She should not be able to see us." Went back to her drawing, humming softly to herself. The next day they brought in more experts. Scientists from 12 different species filled the observation room. They used every tool they had. They scanned the girl with machines that could see through walls. They measured her brain waves. They analyzed her genetic code. They looked for hidden powers, secret weapons, dangerous mutations. They found nothing. Was exactly what she appeared to be. A 12-year-old human girl who liked drawing, who missed her cat, and who thought the aliens were interesting but not scary. "This is impossible," muttered a geneticist. "There must be something we are missing." "Perhaps the scanner made a mistake after all," suggested a psychologist. "The scanner does not make mistakes," said firmly. "In 600 cycles it has never been wrong, not once." High Arbiter had been silent for a long time. Now he spoke again. "I wish to meet the child." Everyone turned to look at him. "Is that wise?" asked. "We do not know what she is capable of." "She is capable of drawing pictures and humming songs," replied. "If she was going to destroy us, I suspect she would have done so already." Before anyone could argue, floated through the door and into his room. The girl looked up from her tablet. Her eyes went wide when she saw the crystal being floating toward her, was beautiful in a way that was hard to describe. His body caught the light and broke it into 1,000 colors. He looked like a living rainbow, like a piece of a star given form and thought. "Hello," said, "you're pretty." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Thank you, child. You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I do not know. Something more frightening, perhaps." Smiled. "I'm not scary, I'm just me." Lowered himself until he was at her eye level. In the observation room, everyone held their breath. Several security officers had their weapons ready, though no one was sure weapons would help if something went wrong. "The machine that scanned you gave a warning," said. "It said you should be handled with care. Do you know why?" "Thought about this." She hugged her stuffed rabbit closer and looked at the crystal being with serious eyes. "My grandmother used to say that about me," she said quietly. "She said I feel things too much. She said I carry things that aren't mine to carry." "What does that mean?" "I don't know," shrugged. "Sometimes I just know things about people, about how they feel. Sometimes I can feel it so much that it hurts. Mom says I'm too sensitive. Dad says I'm special. I just think I'm weird." Was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out with one crystalline limb and gently touched the top of his head. She did not flinch. She did not pull away. She simply looked up at him with trusting eyes. "You are not weird, child," said. "You are something else entirely. I do not yet know what, but I intend to find out." In the observation room, Bora noticed something strange. His equipment showed that energy signature had changed. The ancient being was calmer now, more peaceful, as if simply being near the girl had soothed something old and tired inside him. Bora made a note of this. He had a feeling it was important. He just did not know how important yet. 3 days passed on the station. The artificial sun rose and set in its programmed cycle. Ships came and went. Life continued for most beings, but for the human delegation, time had stopped. Stood before the Galactic Council, his hands shaking with frustration and fear. The council chamber was a massive room shaped like a bowl, with seats rising up on all sides. Representatives from 100 species looked down at him like judges at a trial. "She is just a child," said for what felt like the 100th time. "She has done nothing wrong. You cannot keep her locked in that room forever." "The scanner gave a warning," replied Thresh. He was a species of tall reptiles with scales the color of dried blood. His yellow eyes showed no sympathy. "We must take such warnings seriously." "A warning is not a crime. A warning is not proof of anything." "Perhaps not, but caution is wise when dealing with the unknown." Admiral leaned forward in his seat. The military commander was huge even by the standards of his species. His 4 arms were thick with muscle, and his face was covered in old battle scars. He had fought in wars that lasted centuries. He had destroyed fleets and conquered worlds. He was not afraid of much. But something about this situation made him nervous. "I say we send them back," growled. "Send all the humans back to their planet and forget about them. Let them stay in their little corner of the galaxy where they cannot cause trouble." "We cannot do that," said High Arbiter from his floating position above the council. "The girl has done nothing to deserve exile, and I have spoken with her. She is not dangerous." "Then explain the scanner," Thresh demanded. "Explain Omega classification. Explain why our most trusted machine tells us to handle this child with care." Had no answer. The debate continued. Voices rose and fell. Species that had been enemies for thousands of cycles found themselves agreeing, while old allies argued bitterly. Everyone had an opinion about what to do with the human girl. Knew none of this. She sat in her room, looking out the window at the stars. She had finished all her drawings. She had explored every corner of the small space. She was bored and lonely and missed her home. Her father visited when he could, but the guards always stood too close, listening to every word. could feel their fear. It was like a cold wind that never stopped blowing. She did not understand why they were afraid of her. She was not scary. She was just a girl who wanted to go home. She pressed her hand against the window and watched the ships moving in the distance. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning in its orbit. Her cat was probably sleeping on her bed. Her mother was probably worried sick. "I want to go home," she whispered to no one. Then the alarm started. The sound was unlike anything had ever heard. It was not the sharp beeping of a fire alarm or the wailing of an emergency siren. It was a deep, rumbling tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The lights in her room flickered and changed from white to red. Outside her door she heard guards shouting, running footsteps, screams. The door to her room opened, and a young guard stumbled in. His compound eyes were wide with terror. Green blood dripped from a wound on his arm. "Stay here," he gasped. "Lock the door, do not open it for anyone." "What's happening?" asked. The guard did not answer. He turned and ran, leaving the door swinging open behind him. Stood frozen for a moment. She knew she should stay in the room. She knew she should hide, but she could feel something through the walls of the station. Pain, fear, a hunger so deep and cold that it made her shiver. She grabbed her stuffed rabbit and walked out of the room. The hallway was chaos. Beings ran in every direction, pushing past each other in their panic, pressed herself against the wall and tried to understand what was happening. A diplomat ran past, his blue fur stained with something dark. A group of nephrites floated overhead, their colors screaming in shades of terrified red. Followed the feeling. It pulled at her like a string tied around her heart, down corridors, through doors, past rooms where she glimpsed terrible things, bodies lying still, walls scorched with strange marks. She found the source in the lower sectors of the station. The medical bay was a large room filled with beds and machines. 37 beings had taken shelter there, thinking the medical equipment might offer some protection. They huddled together against the far wall. Adults held children. Enemies held each other. In the face of what they saw, old hatreds meant nothing. In the center of the room floated a creature made of darkness. Had never seen anything like it. The thing had no real shape. It was a shadow that moved wrong, a piece of night that had somehow come alive. Where it passed, the lights died. Where it touched, life ended. It was hunger given form, emptiness made real. The Hollow had heard stories from the older aliens. The Hollow were creatures from between dimensions, from the spaces where reality grew thin. They were drawn to life the way moths were drawn to flame. But unlike moths, the Hollow did not simply admire the light. They consumed it. Warriors had tried to fight the creature. Their bodies lay broken on the floor, their weapons useless beside them. The strongest fighters in the galaxy had lasted only seconds. The Hollow moved toward the survivors, slowly, patiently. It knew they had nowhere to run. A young child began to cry. Her mother tried to quiet her, but it was too late. The Hollow turned toward the sound. It liked fear. It liked the taste of desperate hope dying. "Stop!" The word was quiet, barely more than a whisper. But the Hollow stopped. Everyone in the room turned to see a human girl standing in the doorway. She was small. She held a stuffed rabbit. She should have been the most helpless thing in the room. But something in her voice made the Hollow hesitate. "You're hurting people," said. Her voice shook, but she did not run. "That's wrong." The Hollow made a sound. It was not a sound that belonged in any language. It was the sound of stars going dark, of empty spaces between galaxies, of cold that had never known warmth. It was a sound that drove beings mad. Flinched, tears ran down her face, but she did not run. "I know you're hungry," she said. "I can feel it. You're so hungry it hurts, but this isn't the way." She took a step forward. Every being in the room wanted to scream at her to stop, but their voices would not work. They could only watch as the tiny human girl walked toward the monster that had killed the strongest warriors in the galaxy. "I can feel you," said softly. "You're not evil, you're just empty. You're so empty that you've forgotten what it's like to be full." She reached out her hand. The hollow moved toward her, not to attack, not to kill. It moved toward her the way a freezing creature moves toward fire. There was something in this girl, something warm, something it had been searching for across countless dimensions. Their hands touched, and in the medical bay of the Galactic Integration Station, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, a 12-year-old human girl began to glow. The light that came from was not like any light the beings in the medical bay had ever seen. It was not the harsh white of station lamps. It was not the cold blue of plasma weapons. It was not the burning orange of distant suns. It was warm. That was the only word for it. The light was warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. It touched the survivors huddled against the wall, and they felt their fear begin to fade. It touched the wounded lying on the floor, and their pain grew distant. It filled the room like water filling a cup, pushing out the darkness inch by inch. The hollow screamed. But it was not a scream of attack. It was not a sound of anger. The creature screamed the way someone screams when they wake from a nightmare, when they realize the terrible things chasing them were never real. Where his hand touched the hollow, the darkness began to change. It peeled back like old paint, revealing something underneath, something smaller, something that had been buried beneath the hunger for so long it had forgotten it existed. "It's okay," whispered. Her voice was gentle like a mother speaking to a frightened child. "I know you're scared. I know you've been alone for so long, but you don't have to be hungry anymore." The hollow shuddered. Its form twisted and writhed. The darkness fought against the light, but it was losing. For the first time in its existence, the creature that had consumed worlds was being consumed in return. Not destroyed, understood. Closed her eyes. Tears still ran down her cheeks, but she was smiling now. She could feel everything the hollow was. Its endless hunger, its bottomless loneliness, its existence in the cold spaces between stars, always searching, never finding, taking and taking, because it did not know any other way to fill the emptiness inside. "You came from before," she said, and somehow she knew the words were true even though no one had taught them to her. "Before there was light, before there was warmth, you're so old, older than stars, and you've been hungry for so long." The hollow made a sound. It might have been agreement. It might have been surprise. It had spent eternity being feared and hated. Nothing had ever tried to understand it before. "But there's another way," continued. "You don't have to take, you can share, you can connect. That's what light does. It doesn't run out when you share it, it grows." The survivors watched in amazement. The creature of darkness was shrinking, not dying but transforming. The shadows pulled inward, concentrating, becoming something new. When it was over, a small shape floated in the air where the hollow had been. It looked like a ball of mist, no bigger than its head. It pulsed slowly, like a heart learning to beat for the first time. Opened her eyes. She was exhausted. Her legs shook beneath her, but she smiled at the small thing floating before her. "There you are," she said. "That's who you really are." The mist drifted closer. It touched her cheek and giggled. "That tickles." Throughout the station, alarms were still screaming. Two more hollow had emerged from the void breach, and they were tearing through the lower levels. Security teams were dying. Weapons were useless. Everyone expected to die. Then the hollow stopped. Both creatures froze in the middle of their attacks. They turned, sensing something. A signal, a call, something that resonated in frequencies that only they could hear. They began to move, not toward victims, not toward escape. Toward the medical bay. Bora was running through the corridors when he saw them. He pressed himself against the wall, certain he was about to die. But the hollow passed him without even slowing down. They moved like shadows flowing downhill, pulled by something irresistible. He followed them. When Bora reached the medical bay, he found something impossible. Sat cross-legged in the center of the room, surrounded by three creatures of darkness. But the hollow were not attacking. They floated around her like planets orbiting a sun. Their forms pulsed and shifted, but they made no move to harm anyone. Was humming. It was a simple melody, a lullaby that her grandmother had taught her, passed down through generations of her family. The words were Korean but did not sing them. She only hummed the tune, soft and sweet, and filled with something that had no name. The hollow listened. Bora had studied music theory as a hobby. He understood harmonics and frequencies and the mathematics of sound, but what he was hearing everything he knew. The simple melody should have been nothing more than pleasant noise. Instead, it seemed to fill the room with something real, something that could be felt on the skin and tasted on the tongue. Peace, that was what it was. The song carried peace like a river carries water. The small mist that had been the first hollow began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. The color shifted from to silver to something almost white. The other two hollows shrank as well, their darkness falling away as they listened to the song. When finished, three small lights floated in the air around her. They were not hollow anymore. They were something else, something new. "You can go home now," said. She sounded tired but happy. "You don't have to be hungry anymore. You know how to share now. You can teach the others." The lights pulsed once, twice. Then they rose into the air and passed through the ceiling like ghosts through a wall. They were going back to the void, back to the darkness between dimensions. But they were taking something with them now. A gift, a memory, a new way to exist. In space outside the station, the void breach began to close. The tear in reality sealed itself, and the darkness retreated. Fell backward onto the floor. She was smiling as her eyes closed. "That was hard," she mumbled. "I'm really sleepy now." Pushed through the crowd of survivors and gathered his daughter in his arms. He was crying. Around him, beings from 100 different species stared at the small human girl who had just done the impossible. "What is she?" someone whispered. No one had an answer. Bora knelt beside and checked pulse. It was steady and strong. She was simply exhausted, worn out from doing something that should have been impossible. "She needs rest," Bora said, "somewhere quiet and safe." Nodded and stood up, holding his daughter against his chest. The crowd parted for him. No one tried to stop him. No one tried to take away. As he carried her out of the medical bay, a young child broke free from her mother's grip. She ran forward and pressed something into his hand. It was a small crystal, the kind that children played with, a toy worth almost nothing. "For her," the child said, "because she saved us." Looked around the room. Every being there was watching him. Warriors and diplomats, scientists and children, beings that had spent their lives learning to fear the unknown. None of them looked afraid anymore. They looked grateful. Slept for 2 days. While she rested, the Galactic Integration Station repaired itself. Crews fixed damaged walls. Medical teams treated the wounded. The dead were counted and mourned. 47 beings had lost their lives before reached the medical bay. It was a tragedy, but everyone knew it should have been much worse. The Hollow had destroyed entire worlds before. 3 of them could have killed everyone on the station. Instead, they had listened to a lullaby and gone home in peace. The emergency council gathered in the great chamber 12 hours after woke up. This time, the room was different. The seats that had looked like judges' chairs now seemed more like an audience. Representatives from every species on the station filled the chamber, and they all watched the center of the room. Sat there eating a fruit cup. She was still tired. Dark circles ringed her eyes and she yawned between bites, but she had insisted on coming. She wanted to know why everyone kept looking at her like she had grown a second head. High Arbiter floated above the assembly. His crystal body hummed with colors that no one had seen before. He had spent the last 2 days searching the oldest archives in the galactic network, reading records so ancient they predated the current languages. "I have found something," announced. "Something that explains what we witnessed." The chamber fell silent. "In the beginning of recorded history," continued, "before the great empires, before the star roads, before species learned to travel between worlds, there was a single force that created everything. Our scientists call it the first light. The religious call it the divine spark. Every culture has a name for it. The energy that made something out of nothing. The warmth that pushed back the cold void." Took another bite of her fruit cup. She did not understand why everyone looked so serious. "The first light is not gone," said. "It echoes through everything that exists, but in most beings the echo is faint. We feel it in moments of joy, in acts of kindness, in the love between parent and child. Small sparks of the original fire." He turned to look at. "In some beings the echo is stronger." Admiral leaned forward. "You are saying this child carries the first light, the force that created the universe." "Not carries, channels. She is a bridge between what is and what could be, a connector." His voice softened. "The prophecies speak of a species that would emerge from an unremarkable world, a species that would carry the old light in their hearts, not warriors, not conquerors, healers." "That is just a story," Thresh said, "a myth for children." "I thought so too, until I watched a 12-year-old girl heal creatures that have haunted our nightmares for." Put down her fruit cup. "I didn't heal them, I just talked to them." Everyone turned to look at her. "They were lonely," she continued, "and hungry and scared. They didn't know how to be anything else. I just showed them that there was another way." She shrugged. "My grandmother used to do the same thing for me when I had bad dreams." Made the sound that might have been a laugh. "She does not understand what she did. She does not see her power as power at all. To her it is simply kindness, simply love." Bora stepped forward. He had been reviewing data throughout the council, and his face was thoughtful. "I analyzed the readings from the incident," he said. "When touched the hollow, she emitted a frequency we have never recorded before. It matched theoretical models of the energy signature that would have existed at the moment of creation. The first light is not a myth. It is physics. And somehow, humans carry traces of it in their genetic code." "All humans?" asked. He stood near his daughter, his hand on her shoulder. "All humans, but in most of you it is dormant, hidden. It only wakes under extreme circumstances." Bora looked at. "In your daughter it was never asleep." The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations. Species that had fought wars over resources suddenly saw humanity in a new light. These small, weak, short-lived creatures were not as unimportant as they had assumed. Commander stepped forward. His mandibles clicked as he spoke. "The scanner," he said. "Handle with care, I understand now." Everyone looked at him. The scanner was not warning us that she was dangerous. It was warning us that she was precious. His compound eyes focused on. The most advanced scanner in the galaxy recognized what she was. It gave the only classification appropriate for something so rare and so important. Squirmed under all the attention. "I'm not that special," she mumbled. "I'm just me." "That is exactly what makes you special, child," replied. "You do not seek power. You do not want praise. You simply see pain and wish to heal it. You see loneliness and wish to fill it. You see darkness and bring light without even thinking about it." The council voted that day. It was not a difficult decision. Humanity would not be turned away. They would not be treated as second-class beings or confined to their home system. Instead, they would be welcomed, protected, and given time to grow. The galaxy had many wounds, many old hatreds, many empty spaces that had forgotten what warmth felt like. Perhaps the small beings from the unremarkable planet called Earth could help with that. Weeks later, stood in the observation deck of the station, watching the stars. She held her stuffed rabbit in one hand and the crystal in the other. Behind her, Her father spoke with diplomats about treaties and trade agreements, important things that did not understand and did not care about. High Arbiter floated beside her. "Are you happy, child?" he asked. "Thought about this. I miss home," she admitted. "I miss my cat, I miss my bed, but I'm glad I came." She looked up at the ancient crystal being. The Hollow were so sad, they had been sad for so long, and now they're not sad anymore. I did that, me. You did. Does that mean I have to keep doing it, helping people, healing things? Was quiet for a moment. His crystal body shifted through colors of thought and reflection. You do not have to do anything. Your gift is yours. You can share it or keep it. You can heal the galaxy or live a quiet life on your home world. No one can force you to be anything other than what you choose to be. Nodded slowly. She pressed her face against the window and watched a ship drift past, carrying beings to distant worlds she had never heard of. "I think I want to help," she said finally. "Not because I have to, but because it feels right. When I helped the Hollow, I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do, like I was finally in the right place." His crystal body chimed softly. It was, realized, his version of a smile. "Then the galaxy is fortunate indeed," he said. "Handle with care of Earth, not because you are fragile, but because what you carry inside you is the most precious thing in existence." "What's that?" Hope smiled. She did not fully understand everything that had happened. She did not know that she would spend the next 100 years traveling the galaxy, healing old wounds and building bridges between species that had hated each other for. She did not know that her children and would carry the same gift, spreading light into corners of the universe that had known only darkness. All she knew in that moment was that the stars were beautiful, and she was not alone, and somewhere out in the vast emptiness of space, creatures that had been hungry for eternity were finally at peace. And that was enough. That was more than enough.